Hey everybody, I'm Michelle. I'm with Mighty Dubia Feeders, and we are a small family-owned business selling feeder insects like dubia roaches and worms out of Houston, Texas. We ship nationwide, so look for that information like our website, mightydubiafeeders.com, in our description box below. But hey, our channel is to educate you guys, and we love educating you guys with all things feeder insects, how to have your own colonies and how to get established, because you know what? Feeder insects are expensive, and that's why 5 years ago when we had so many reptiles and amphibians and spiders and tarantulas, we're like, you know what? We need to get our own stuff going, and we just had a mass index more, so then we got into the breeding business. But hey, I'm glad that you're here. You probably clicked on this thumbnail today because you have a colony or you're thinking about getting a colony and you just want to be well versed in it. Most likely you are here because you're like, why are my dubia dying? And there can be so many different reasons, you guys, why dubia roach is dying. Some of it, of course, is natural, and some of it is not natural. Some of it is things that you can help prevent to make your colony live longer, produce more babies, and feed your pets. So hey, let's go ahead. I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone. I'm gonna be in these breeder colonies today. I'm gonna be sorting and getting stuff done, but I thought I would talk to you about some reasons why you may be finding dead roaches, or you are finding dead roaches in your bins, and what are the reasons why that could be happening. So let's talk about it. Let's go. Okay guys, the very first one I want to talk to you about why your dubia roaches may be dying is that it may be related to poor environmental conditions. So let's talk about that now. Okay guys, let's talk about your environmental conditions and how dubia roaches do good and why they might be dying. This could be caused by, well, number one is your temperature. Is your temperature off? Because dubia roaches are tropical species and they like to be pretty warm. They can survive between 50 and 80 or 50 and 90. So the 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit is if you want to breed them, but they can survive up to about as low as 50 degrees. Now, if you are keeping them in a super cold room or in a room that is not, let's say, very well temperature controlled and is either too hot or too cold, I would say above 90 or below 50, that can cause some problems with your dubia. That can not only cause them to die, but if they are living and surviving, they're in survival mode and they're definitely not going to be breeding. So that's the first one. So the second one is if you have your humidity off. So these dubia roaches need really good humidity. They need to stay between 40 and 60% humidity, and they really need it, and it's important because they need to go ahead and be able to molt correctly. We're going to talk more about that later. So let's talk about humidity real quick. If you have too high or too low, that can totally throw off your colony. So you really need to make sure that you have perfect humidity as much as possible, because these dubia roaches need it for molting. It's really important, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we want to make sure that we're not having too high of humidity, because what can happen is that there can be mold. There can be mold, and there can be the introduction of fungus and things like that. And those type of things can kill a colony really quick. But more on that. Okay guys, you see I'm getting to work. But first of all, I want to say is that we need good ventilation. You cannot have a bunch of happy babies like this, an adult, if you don't have good ventilation, right? So we have a video that we did on how to make a proper roach bin, including where you can get, let me show you, these type of vents, as well as different ways that you can properly ventilate your bin system. And so it's always important. So what can kill your roaches if they don't have proper ventilation? The airflow is not going to them correctly, and the quality of air that they're breathing is not good. Also, if you have too much moisture, too much humidity, right, then what happens is that it's dark and moist and not a lot of airflow. Well, what happens is mold, right? And bacteria and fungus. So those things can lead to death. So you want to make sure that you have a very good ventilated type of bin. And I want to tell y'all that we, especially during the summer, we don't even put our tops on top of our bins. We will in the in the winter time, but not in the summer. So it really just all depends on where you guys live. We have people all around the world watching this, and you might live in an area where the environment is okay for you to leave the lids off, or you might be in a colder environment, or depending on what time of year you're watching this, all those factor in. So just think about that. But what you need is very good ventilation. Okay, guys, the next thing I want to talk about is what kind of food are you feeding them? Okay, this is really important. If you're seeing a massive die-off, or if we did, thank God we haven't ever, but if we did, I would think the first thing I would think is possibly wrong is like, oh my gosh, what did we feed them? Did we feed something that had a pesticide on it? So you need to think about that if you're having that. If you're having a lot of massive die-off in your colony, that could be one reason why. So just make sure that you are very careful about your produce that you're putting into your colony. A lot of people say in the roach community that you should use organic. We try to do that, but hey, let's face it, times are hard, right? So what we do is we use a vegetable wash, and we get all, we make sure we peel everything. We make sure that we do a good job on peeling all the carrots, and we wash all the apples and oranges very well with getting all the pesticides off. So there's washes and rinses that you can use for that, and you just do a very diligent, good job. If you want to, you can, to be extra safe, if you're very worried about that and you've had a die-off, go ahead and peel the apples. Go ahead and take the rinds off of the orange peels off and things like that, and don't put them in your colony. So that is something that you should probably think about if you've had a die-off, because what happens is that farmers, I'm sure you guys know this, they use those pesticides and insecticides and fertilizer and all kinds of stuff that they spray on their crops. And so their whole goal is to kill insects and not have the insects affect their crop and their harvest. And so we need to be careful and mindful of that. So that's one thing that can really do a havoc on your colony. So be very, very careful for that. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to scream at my husband and kids, hey, bring me that wash so I can show you the one that we've been using. Hold on one second. Okay, so my son is holding, and this is the veggie wash that we use. And so you can probably purchase that anywhere all across the world. Just go to your grocery store, and in the produce aisle, they should have something like this, a veggie wash that you can do your oranges, your apples, whatever kind of fruits. My son is laughing at me. You can do whatever kind of fruits and vegetables with that. I'm just also very diligent to make sure I scrub it all off too, and then dry it and stuff like that. So we haven't had anything bad. We haven't had any die off, and this gets off insecticide and pesticides and any kind of fertilizer that would come from the farmers. Thank you, Elijah. Okay, guys, another thing I just want to mention before we go on to the next thing is examine your fruit, right? So I just bought these oranges not that long ago, but when I was looking through them and getting ready to wash them with that soap I just showed you, with veggie wash, look, I found some mold and some stuff. Like, this orange is not looking so hot, is it? So what I will do is, I've already washed all these, but I will go ahead and cut as much of that all the way away, and I will inspect the good part and make sure that it's good and that there's no like rottenness inside of this before I give it to them. If I see it's penetrated all the way to the bottom, this side of the orange looks okay, but then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just toss it, because you never know, there could be mold in here, there could be whatever kind of stuff in here, and I don't want to give it to my bugs. So I'm going to cut through and make sure it's all a-okay, and then I'll give it to them, if that makes sense. So y'all need to do that too. Okay, guys, another thing that you need to think about for why a possibility your roaches are dying is dehydration. So dubia roaches need a lot of water. So they need a lot of water source. And there are multiple ways that you can give this to your dubia roaches. We like to use water crystals here, as well as fresh fruit. So the ones that are very high in moisture content are apples and oranges. And we really love to feed those. And then we also give water crystals to them, and that helps them, and we put it in multiple areas. So depending on what kind of colony that you have, if you have a really big one like this one, or an 18-gallon like some of these, you might have to go ahead and give multiple sources throughout the colony to help that all of the roaches can get to the water that you're supplying, either through fruit or a water wicking system or something like that. I know those type of things are on the market. So that is really important. They need a lot of hydration to stay healthy and strong and to be good producers. So that is something that I want you guys to think about. Have you been giving them enough water through fruits and vegetables and things that are high in water content? Have you been giving it to them often enough? Sometimes when they get dehydrated and they die, it's because you're not giving it to them several times a week. So that could be a culprit of it. So you want to make sure that you are not only giving your roaches a good amount of water hydration in these type of forms that I'm talking about, but that you're doing it often enough, right? But at the same token, if you're using like those oranges or apples and things like that, what's another thing that can kill them? Like I said, the mold, right? And fungus and bacteria. So you just don't want to like put some apples and oranges in there and then not check on it. You know what I mean? So like some of us, like we're busy, we have other jobs. So we go ahead and check on them every other day, or just like bypass, come in the garage and look and make sure everything looks okay. And also it's going to help cut down, if you look at your produce that you're putting in and your water crystals and things like that, and you keep an eye on it, let's say every other day, every 2 days, you can go ahead and remove what is moldy, and you can also prevent yourself from having to have too many fruit flies certain times of years, which we're dealing with fruit flies in the South right now, which these are great for that. They've already been killing a whole bunch. And I have a video that I did already on some tips that you can do to help get rid of some fruit flies, and I will link it here or in the description below. But yeah, that's the one thing that I wanted to also mention is hydration and check for the mold. Okay guys, another reason that you could have death in your colony is if the roaches are molting, but they're not having enough humidity, and so they're basically getting stuck. So what happens is as these roaches get bigger and they're molting into adulthood, they sometimes want to basically burst. So how they molt is they go through 7 instars, which is basically means 7 molts. And each time they do that, they get bigger inside of their old exoskeleton, and they want to come out and burst out of their old one. And then it takes some time after they molt, they're that white color, for it to harden on their new exoskeleton. But sometimes what happens if there's not enough humidity, then basically they have a hard time molting, and then you might see some that died at your end of your bin, so inside of your bin. So I just want to make sure that you know that humidity is very important. Okay, you see in the Dubia community that some people say to spray these bins. Here in the South, we don't really like to do that because these egg crates will start to get like wobbly and soggy and soft. And what happens is that as they get sprayed, they can grow mold and bacteria and fungus. And then you're sitting there having to replace them all the time. But I leave that to y'all's discretion. Some people at certain different parts, maybe you live in a dry, arid place and that your humidity is, you're fine with spraying, you know? So some people say spray twice a week. We say as long as you have good ventilation like this, that it should be okay. But you want to make sure that they have access to moisture and water. So you want to use those different systems I talked about earlier, like water wicking methods, the crystals like what we use, and fruit like oranges and apples that have good moisture content. So, you know, the next thing I really want to point out to you guys is this, that sometimes, depending on who you're listening to, they can tell you or recommend that you go ahead and gut load your feeders with calcium, because such as like your reptiles, bearded dragons and geckos and stuff, you should be dusting the bugs before you give it to them. But some people say go ahead and give like your dry food, mix it with calcium. We do not recommend that at Mighty Dubia Feeders. What we say is that this can cause the exoskeleton to become very, very hard. So if the dubias are eating more calcium, then it's going to be harder for them to molt and get out of their shell. And so definitely don't do that. Just do what most people say, which is feed them a good healthy food like veggies and fruits, and a good roach chow like the one that we have on our website. And that should be fine. You don't need to add any calcium to their diet. what you need to do before you feed it to your pet is do the dusting of the calcium on the actual bug before you feed it to your pet. All right, so on to the next one. Okay, you guys, so now I want to talk about the next reason why you could be having some death in your colony, and it has to do with these guys. So there is an importance to the ratio. If you've watched any of our other videos on education of dubia, you'll see that we always talk about a ratio and how important that you have a good ratio between these females right here and between them and the males, which I'm not seeing a male on there just right now. Oh yeah, right here is a male. So we like to use a 4 female to 1 male ratio, but you know, you can go up to 7 females to 1 male. Now the importance has to do with stress. So these boys will stress each other out because they're fighting for competition for these females. And so if you have too many males, they'll also stress each other out. They'll fight with each other, they'll eat each other's wings and things like that, as well as they'll stress these ladies out. So a lot of times the ladies won't want to, like if they're too stressed, they won't want to breed. And also if they're already pregnant, they can drop their ootheca, which is their egg sac, which is where all these little babies will come out of. So you just want to remember to go ahead and have a good ratio so that they're not stressed out. And so too many females, the females can also kind of protect their nymphs, protect their babies and each other. And they can also kind of hog the food from the males. So the males, too many of them will fight and stress out the females, and the females will also kind of hog the food. So you want to be very particular with having a good ratio in your colony. Otherwise, you will have death because they will be fighting and not sharing, basically. So another thing is that you can have with this whole stress thing, you can have them fighting for, you know, room. And so if you have a lot of stress, then you know that's not good and they don't have enough room. So on these egg crates, you only want to have about enough for about 300 total on each side. If you have more than that, it can stress them out and they can die because of stress. So I just wanted to point that out. We usually like to put, you know, you guys are probably not doing it for mass breeding like we are, but just keep in mind you want to have about 300 on this for yourself, and that should be just perfectly good, okay? Of course, another reason that you can have some death in your colony is old age, right? So these dubias typically the females will last 1.5 to 2 years. But, you know, that's just a guesstimation, okay? The males usually die before that. They probably will last, I would say anywhere from 9 months to a year. They usually are the first ones to die. So that is completely normal. You will have some die off in your colony. At Mighty Dubia Feeders, we do give mature females because you guys want those right away, and the fact that you want them to start breeding, because it takes a while from the time a female becomes an actual adult for her to be ready. But the boys are ready right away. But we do give freshly molted. We have a bin where it's just completely freshly molted for you guys, so that you don't have to worry about that die off because of old age. All of ours that you get are going to be freshly molted and under a few months mature females. Okay guys, so to wrap up real quick, I just want to go ahead over a few more things about stress. So we just talked about you know, having too many males and females, and that can stress out a colony when your ratio is off. I also want to remind you about the temperatures. You want to make sure you be very careful with those environmental conditions, with making sure you have the right temperature for these guys, make sure you have the right humidity for them, and that you're being very careful about the fruits and the vegetables and everything that you're feeding them. I also want to remind you that sorting them too often can also stress them out, and it can make the females lose their ootheca or drop them, and then you basically lose babies. So that's another thing that you can see death. If you sort, you will see that. I just want to let you know right now, if you sort, we try to sort like once every, I don't know, month to 2 months, but we do that because we're breeding them for commercial use to sell to you guys. So you guys don't need to do that as often, but just know there will be die off, and that's normal because they're being stressed. They're being very stressed. And so that's normal to see some of that. So the less that you go ahead and sort these guys, the better it will be for your colony and the colony's production. Okay guys, what'd you think? I hope that you liked that video. I hope you found it very informative, very educational. I love that you guys give us a chance and opportunity to sell you feeders, to sell you colonies, to give you supplies and give you education. We're so appreciative of all our subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button, excuse me, and you hit a like. Give us a like so that algorithm gets boosted for our videos and shows them more to people that need this information. All right, you guys, if you need anything, leave a comment below, and we try to always answer our comments as quickly as we can. And also, if you would like to buy feeders or a Dubia Roach colony from us, or if you would like to check out our Dubia Roach playlist, you can find that below. I'll link all these things below in the description box. Thanks for watching, you guys. Y'all have a blessed day. Bye.